Peter Gabriel is known for creating some of the most innovative music in rock history. Songs like Sledgehammer and In Your Eyes made him famous as a musical pioneer. He was also known for his theatrical performances with Genesis and his groundbreaking solo albums. However, his drive for artistic perfection often caused serious problems with other musicians and collaborators. Gabriel's pursuit of musical excellence wasn't just about making great music. It also led to damaged relationships, broken friendships, and lasting anger throughout the progressive rock community. These weren't small disagreements that got worked out quickly. Instead, they were major conflicts that split up bands, destroyed personal relationships, and created enemies that lasted for decades. The clash with Tony Banks. One of Gabriel's most significant conflicts was with Tony Banks, the keyboard player for Genesis. This creative battle helped break apart one of progressive rock's most ambitious bands. The problem centered around who would control the music and the band's artistic direction during Genesis's early experimental years. Tony Banks had classical piano training and created complex synthesizer arrangements that dominated the band's sound. But Peter Gabriel wanted equal creative space for his theatrical concepts and unusual song structures. According to people who worked with Genesis, recording sessions became very tense affairs, where both men fought over studio time and how songs should be arranged. Gabriel apparently grew frustrated with Banks's academic approach to writing songs. He felt it limited the band's emotional range and made it harder to create theatrical performances. Banks, on the other hand, reportedly thought Gabriel's costume ideas and storytelling elements were just distracting gimmicks that took attention away from the music itself. The breaking point came in 1974 during the recording of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Multiple people who worked with the band said Gabriel wanted more atmospheric keyboard sounds to support his narrative concept, while Banks insisted on keeping his intricate musical passages. Studio engineers remembered heated arguments, where Gabriel accused Banks of caring more about showing off his technical skills than serving the songs. Their artistic differences became more obvious when Gabriel started developing solo material that used very few keyboard parts. Banks allegedly told other band members that Gabriel was becoming impossible to work with and was holding back Genesis's musical growth. This keyboard conflict played a major role in Gabriel's eventual decision to leave the band permanently. Problems with Mike Rutherford. Gabriel also had a bitter dispute with Genesis guitarist Mike Rutherford that created permanent divisions over creative ownership and musical direction. The trouble began when Rutherford started taking more control over Genesis's guitar-driven material, while Gabriel was developing his conceptual album ideas. Both musicians had strong opinions about where the band should go musically, but their visions were completely opposite. According to music industry sources, Gabriel felt that Rutherford was trying to steer Genesis toward mainstream rock radio, instead of supporting the experimental theatrical approach that made them unique. Rutherford reportedly complained that Gabriel's elaborate stage concepts were overshadowing the actual musicianship and making the band look like a circus act rather than serious musicians. The fights over songwriting credits became particularly nasty during the mid-1970s. Former band associates claimed Gabriel accused Rutherford of taking unfair publishing percentages on songs where Gabriel contributed most of the lyrics and concepts. Rutherford allegedly responded that Gabriel's theatrical additions didn't count as real songwriting contributions. Their relationship hit its lowest point when Rutherford formed his band, Mike and the Mechanics, after Genesis achieved commercial success, with Phil Collins as the new lead singer. Gabriel reportedly saw this as proof that Rutherford had always cared more about commercial appeal than artistic integrity. Industry insiders remember Gabriel making cutting remarks about Rutherford's formulaic pop sensibilities during interviews throughout the 1980s. The two men barely spoke at Genesis's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, maintaining their decades-long professional coldness. Battles with record company executives. Gabriel also had ongoing battles with various record company executives who tried to control his artistic output and commercial direction throughout his career. The conflict started during Genesis's later years when Atlantic Records pressured the band to create more radio-friendly material. Gabriel allegedly clashed repeatedly with AR representatives who wanted him to tone down his theatrical performances and focus on conventional song structures that would appeal to American audiences. Things got worse when Gabriel launched his solo career and insisted on maintaining complete creative control over his recordings. Former Charisma Records staff remember explosive meetings where Gabriel refused to compromise his artistic vision for commercial considerations. He allegedly told one executive that he would rather quit making music than create a sanitized corporate product designed by committee. The situation reached crisis levels during negotiations for his world music projects in the 1980s. Record company bosses couldn't understand why Gabriel wanted to incorporate African and Middle Eastern musicians into his albums, arguing that Western audiences wouldn't connect with such experimental sounds. According to industry veterans, Gabriel became notorious for walking out of label meetings and threatening to break contracts, rather than accept creative interference. He reportedly told one major label president that corporate executives were destroying musical innovation and had no understanding of artistic development. These business battles cost Gabriel several lucrative deals and delayed multiple album releases, but he maintained his reputation as an uncompromising artist who refused to bow to commercial pressure from industry bureaucrats. The complex relationship with Phil Collins. Perhaps the most documented tension in Gabriel's career was his complicated relationship with Phil Collins, the drummer who replaced him as Genesis's frontman. The problem started immediately after Gabriel left Genesis in 1975. While Gabriel expected the band to eventually dissolve without his creative leadership, Collins stepped up as lead vocalist and transformed Genesis into a commercial powerhouse that achieved far greater mainstream success than Gabriel ever had. According to former Genesis management, Gabriel felt personally betrayed when Collins's pop-oriented approach brought the band massive radio hits and arena tours. Gabriel had spent years building Genesis's reputation as an innovative art rock collective, only to watch Collins turn it into what Gabriel allegedly called background music for shopping malls. The rivalry intensified throughout the 1980s when both men were competing for similar audiences. Music journalists remember the subtle tension at industry events where Gabriel and Collins would deliberately avoid each other, or make diplomatic but pointed comments about different approaches to musical integrity. Former record company executives claimed Gabriel was particularly bitter about Collins's simultaneous success with Genesis and his solo career. Gabriel reportedly told associates that Collins was double-dipping and spreading himself too thin to create meaningful artistic work in either context. The situation reached peak awkwardness during Genesis's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, where both men had to share the stage, despite years of professional coldness. Their brief interaction was polite, but clearly strained, confirming decades of unresolved creative differences. The fierce competition with Sting. Gabriel also had fierce competition with Sting that divided the art rock community and created lasting professional animosity. Both musicians were exploring similar territory in the 1980s, incorporating world music elements, addressing social issues, and positioning themselves as intellectually serious artists rather than mere pop entertainers. This overlap created direct competition that neither man appreciated. According to music industry insiders, Gabriel felt that Sting was copying his approach to global musical collaboration without understanding the cultural significance behind it. Gabriel had spent years developing relationships with African and Latin American musicians only to watch Sting achieve mainstream success with his own world music experiments. The conflict escalated when both artists were competing for the same international musicians and producers. Former studio managers remember booking conflicts where Gabriel's team would specifically request sessions when they knew Sting was also trying to reserve time with particular world music specialists. Gabriel allegedly accused Sting of musical tourism during a private conversation at a charity event, suggesting that Sting was exploiting world music traditions for commercial gain rather than genuine artistic exploration. Sting reportedly responded by questioning Gabriel's commercial motivations and suggesting that his world music phase was just another theatrical gimmick. Their mutual dislike became obvious when neither would agree to participate in collaborative projects or tribute albums that featured the other artist. Event organizers learned to book them for separate nights to avoid backstage confrontations that could overshadow the actual performances. The ultimate rivalry with David Bowie. Gabriel's most intense artistic rivalry was his decades-long creative war with David Bowie. This wasn't just professional competition, but a battle for the soul of experimental rock music. The conflict began in the early 1970s, when both artists were pioneering theatrical rock performances with elaborate costumes and conceptual album narratives. Gabriel felt that Bowie was receiving more critical attention for innovations that Genesis had been developing simultaneously, creating resentment that lasted for decades. According to former Bowie collaborators, Gabriel became obsessed with proving his artistic superiority over Bowie. When Bowie moved to Berlin for his experimental trilogy, Gabriel allegedly told associates that Bowie was following trends instead of setting them and lacked authentic creative vision. The rivalry reached its peak during the 1980s, when both artists were exploring electronic music and multimedia presentations. Music industry veterans remember Gabriel actively competing with Bowie for the same cutting-edge producers, video directors, and visual artists who could enhance their increasingly sophisticated artistic concepts. Former studio engineers claimed that Gabriel would monitor Bowie's recording schedules and deliberately book sessions with similar musicians immediately afterward, attempting to steal collaborators and stay ahead of Bowie's creative development. The ultimate insult came when Gabriel allegedly dismissed Bowie's commercial success as style over substance during a rare unguarded interview moment. Their Cold War continued until Bowie's death, with both artists maintaining polite public facades while privately competing for recognition as rock's premier artistic innovator. Neither man ever publicly acknowledged their rivalry, but industry insiders knew about the tension that existed between two of rock's most creative minds. The cost of perfectionism. Gabriel's relentless pursuit of artistic innovation created unexpected enemies throughout his legendary career. These conflicts reveal how creative perfectionism can destroy professional relationships and split musical communities. While Gabriel maintained his artistic integrity and created groundbreaking music, the cost was high in terms of damaged relationships and burned bridges. The question remains whether Gabriel was defending true artistry against commercial pressures and inferior creative visions, or whether he was simply impossible to work with due to his uncompromising nature. What's clear is that his pursuit of musical excellence came at a significant personal and professional cost, leaving a trail of former collaborators who felt pushed aside or undermined by his creative ambitions.